Hi, there's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with a Double Masters investment guide. Some tips, tricks, and strategies for investing in Double Masters. I actually like targeting the singles rather than buying into the sealed product. Typically, when you buy into the sealed product, you are trying to bank on the fact that it will appreciate in value within the next few years. And that's not what we've seen with the other master sets like Iconic Masters, Masters 25, and now Ultimate Masters, that if you even got in around the distributor price of those particular sets, they took way too long to actually appreciate in value to where you could actually flip them. Mind you, that flipping sealed is a lot harder than singles because of the shipping costs, and you have to factor that in. And you often have to use places like eBay or Amazon that do take that huge cut. Whereas with singles, you can actually find buy lists and other places that you can make those fees go down a lot if you know where to go to sell those particular cards. So a little bit of background. I've never had, well, I do have success flipping sealed now because I've got a huge audience to where I can get in at distributor price, and then either what I do for my profit margin is just have a subscription fee where people actually pay into my service and they get booster boxes at cost. And I've been able to get in some boxes a while back, say like Amonkhet or Rivals of Ixalan, for distributor price, and then I just match what I would have to replace them with how much I pay for a distributor. So people don't have that outlet that I have, and if you were to get in on most of these master sets at like the Iconic Masters distributor price, and then, I mean, barely right now you'd be able to flip it and make a profit. So I am not a fan of sealed products for master sets, mainly due to the fact that if you actually look at the core sets that have come out, Ultimate Masters was more recent than Guilds of Ravnica. Let that sink in. If Ultimate Masters was still a standard set, if it was printed in standard, it would still be legal in standard. That's how short of a time frame that they printed Ultimate Masters to Double Masters. So we have to consider that. We have to assume that Triple Masters or Quadruple Masters is going to come out before Double Masters rotates out of standard, if it were a standard set. So that's one of the reasons I don't like these sealed. However, singles gives you a lot more flexibility because you can pick winners and losers and invest in those particular cards rather than invest in the sealed as a whole. So take Ultimate Masters, for example. It has recovered since April's low. So this was a set. This is exactly what I said was going to happen to Ultimate Masters. It had about a box value of 1,600 when the cards were spoiled. This had no terrible cards. Actually, compared to Double Masters, I would say Ultimate Masters was the better set because there wasn't a lot of bulk in the set. Double Masters, unfortunately, has a lot of bulk. I think they gave themselves a lot more flexibility because you're getting two rares in a set, or two, the slots of having mythics and rares is two of slots rather than the one of slot that's in Ultimate Masters. So it gives them a lot more flexibility with the bulk. However, the cost of Double Masters is more than Ultimate Masters, so it's kind of a give and take there. Ultimate Masters, though, its low was finally around the start of the year. January, nope, it had been April. April is right around when the pandemic started and things started really crashing. That was the low of Ultimate Masters. Like everything else in Magic the Gathering, was able to recover mainly due to the stimulus checks and the inflation of the US dollar, where it just drove up prices. There also was a lot of online sellers that went offline because of stores getting shut down, not being able to go to work, and all that sort of stuff. So we saw the double whammy of both the inflation of the dollar plus the kind of the chokehold on the market, where there wasn't as much supply that should be entering into the market, and we saw prices across the board increase, and a little bit of a false recovery from Ultimate Masters. If you actually look at Ultimate Masters was full of more of the competitive cards, and most of the gains of Ultimate Masters is in very few spots with the Commander playable cards. So I want to talk about that for Double Masters today, on what you should avoid, what you should possibly get in on if the price goes low enough, and of course what you should buy. So if we're looking over at Ultimate Masters, you can see that what I have here from when Ultimate Masters was being released is I have this copy pasta thing that I stole from MTG Goldfish and then started inputting the real prices. I thought that they did a terrible job of actually keeping up with the real prices. They were doing something like TCG Mid, which was really, really unreasonable compared to TCG Market or Amazon Market of the cards. And I was keeping an eye on the Ultimate Masters around the time. And I think the last time that this was edited, it says edited on February 20th of 2019. I actually think that, yeah, that actually might be the last time it was edited, where I actually put in the inputs of Ultimate Masters. So it hasn't been updated since then, so we can kind of see the prices of where they were at from February of 2019, just a few short months after the set was released. And then we can compare it to where cards have gone. And so if you actually look at most of these competitive cards, they haven't fared well. The Lilianas, the Karns, the Tarmogoyfs, even the cards like Karakas, because Karakas is, I believe, banned in Commander, right? That's the land that bounces a Commander. And even like the Bitter Blossoms, those are the cards that have done, pretty terrible. They've either been flatlined out or they've gone down. Like Karn Liberated gone way down. Of course, it's getting another reprint, but it was already going down. Tarmogoyf has gone down and flattened off. And we have Liliana that's really flattened off. And Snapcaster Mage has gone down and flattened off. So this aren't the type of cards that you want to get in on. I mean, the best case scenario is you've broken even on these things like Liliana's. Like Liliana is 67.46, and it was at 69.99 in February at the last time. So it's actually gone slightly down. Karn Liberated's gone down, but then you start to look at all the cards that have either double value in both Commander and in Modern, like Caverns of Souls. That's been the real big winner of the Ultimate Masters. So you look at Ultimate Masters, and Caverns of Souls has gone up to 75. This is a little bit of a recent uptick, as Caverns of Souls just recently had a bit of a shift upwards. But it was really the Mythic, the expensive Mythic. You see that when the dust settled, there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards above the $40 mark, and this is the one that's fared the most out of Ultimate Masters, where now you actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that are around that $40 mark, 11 if you count Demonic Tutor in the mix. And a lot of the cards that have actually gone up in value have been these Commander playable cards like the Koziliks, the Ulamogs, and the Phyrexian Altar. That's one that snuck up on us as a rare. So these are the type of cards that we're definitely going to try to target. And we're going to avoid things like the Vengevines and the Life from the Loams and the Engineered Explosives. It's got another reprinting in this set, and those particular cards which don't fare too well in the Commander format. All right, so if we look at the box toppers, another thing I want to talk about, box toppers have fared very terrible. So I think that that's not the strategy you want to go on, is the VIP cards. And so the full arts and the foils, I don't think are going to be the things that you want to be targeting, because I think that people are giving them too much credibility for long term. So box toppers were something that everyone talked about that was just going to be something long term that's going to go up in value. However, we've seen the exact opposite with these things end up being like a $350 card still going down. So Liliana is just not special. I've said this multiple times on this channel: when you make everything special, nothing becomes special. And especially when foils are hard to put in decks. So if it's a competitive card, you want to pimp out your deck, well, now you risk the chance of getting DQ'd because of the Pringle of the foils and the really hard it is to preserve these cards. I hate foils. Near mints on foils are very, very tough to keep in that form. Any little nick, little scratch, it just really kills the value. A lightly played foil has a huge spread compared to a lightly played non-foil. Typically, there isn't much of a spread between lightly played in non-foil and non-foil and near mint non-foil, but in the foiling of near mint versus lightly played, there's a huge margin. And then if we talk about when it gets into moderately played, then there's a massive value. And then when you get into like heavily played, a heavily played foil usually has a worse price tag than something like a heavily played regular. So that's why I don't like foils, because of not only are they hard to sell sometimes, but they also are something that can be a liability. You have to be super, super careful with them in the storage and make sure that you have humidity controlled and whatnot, because these suckers don't fare the best long term. Now, people might say, well, that might be if I am someone that does keep really good condition of my cards. Well, well, then that's going to fare better than I'm going to have the card in near mint, and the rest of them are going to get dumbed down. Yeah, but again, they just reprint these too much. By the time that Liliana actually becomes something that you can invest in, or it starts going up, I'm sure they'll have another special printing of Liliana. That's what we've seen with these particular box toppers. So I do not like the VIP cards, just from the history of collector's edition cards, from the history of box toppers and all these other special things that have come out in the past few years. I do not like the VIP versions of cards. So I like to pick on the cards that I think have the ability to really go up. So let's look at like Mikaeus. Mikaeus is a perfect example of a card that you should look at. So this is a card that didn't have any competitive play, so it really came out the gates kind of weak at $15 card for a Mythic. This is a card that's gone up because it does see a ton of Commander play. We have this beautiful site called the EDH Rec. They don't have Double Masters up quite yet, but you can actually see which cards are hot from whatever set. So if you actually look at the reprints from Ultimate Masters, the cards that see the most play, the first one, of course, is going to be Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth in 47,000 decks. So Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, we go over to Ultimate Masters, I guarantee this is a card that is probably aged well. So there you have it. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth was a $27 card now. When it first came out, it was a $10 card, going all the way down to $10. And you can see that Commander has just had a good time outstretching the supply of the Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. One of the other things that I love about Commander cards is you typically don't see these big price spikes and then price readjustments. It is just a slow but steady supply getting outstretched by the demand, and these things slowly tick upwards a few cents per day, and all of a sudden a few cents per day ends up being Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth going from $12 to $27. If you actually look at something like a Commander card, you'll see it's all of a sudden a flavor of the week, and then it spikes up in value, and then that price readjusts, and then it spikes up in value. And yeah, you can make a lot on the flipping and when it's kind of in that roller coaster, but these are the more safer investments. Is Commander is the tried, tested, and true format that is able to, invest into a card and then flip a card before it gets reprinted. So there are plenty of these in Ultimate Masters that fared very well. Another one I want to show is Baleful Dragon. I believe this was the least expensive Mythic, went down to $4.50. If we go over and check my list, yep, it's $4. Yep, second least expensive Mythic comparative to the Lord of Extinction that bottomed out at $4. So Baleful Dragon had a Balefire Dragon. We come over here to EDH Rec and see if we can actually find it. Yep, it's in 7,000 decks, which is, it's reasonable. If you actually look at the red cards that reprinted, it was the first... No, okay, so it'd be like the second rare / mythic that was... it did better than most of the rares, at least reprinted in Ultimate Masters. I guess there wasn't a lot of goodies here for rares and Ultimate Masters for red. But anyway, even a 7,000 in 7,000 decks, of course, we had some dragon themes that came out in Core 2020 and 2021 that probably led to building Commander decks that wanted Balefire Dragon. There also was some cheat-in decks for sure, Commanders that wanted cheat-in cards. That Baleful Dragon is also a very good reanimation target, so it hits the sweet spot on both of those. And you can see that this was a card that was able to appreciate in value very well. If we actually look at rares, then we get into the cards like the Phyrexian Altar. We go over to my list here. We have Phyrexian Altar went all the way down to $15. $15 for the Phyrexian Altar. You compare it to something like Noble Hierarch that at that point bottomed out at 38, that people were very, very bullish on, that Modern was going to have resurgence, same thing like Engineered Explosives, and we compare them to now where we have the Noble Hierarch going all the way down to 28, which now gets another reprint, and we have like Engineered Explosive just completely getting crushed, $10, which also got another reprint. That's another thing I don't like about investing in Modern is I think Wizards is late to the party. So we had like 2014, that was really the boom of Modern, where Modern was the commodity that you wanted to get into. It was the cards that got reprinted, you invested in them, they went up in value. That was the tried, tested, true format. I just think at this point in time that Modern is kind of stagnated off, and the biggest difference between Commander players and Modern players is Modern players, they buy and sell a lot of decks. They play the latest flavor of the week. So if a deck falls out of favor, they sell their deck. So it's this constant supply that gets injected from reselling decks. Commander players are your Timmies of all Timmies when it comes to collecting cards. They remember how they liked a deck, and they do not want to part. Either they built a new commander deck, they don't want to part with that first commander deck that they built, or that what I've noticed with my commander players is they don't break apart their decks. They just keep increasing the volume of commander decks that they choose from. And they also tend to be a lot different than competitive players that just are okay playing the same deck. They actually want to master a deck, so they play Storm 50,000 times to try to master it. Well, commander players like a variety in general. This is, of course, just being stereotypical in general, where commander players are like, okay, last week I played my Avacyn deck. Well, this week I want to play this particular deck instead of it. So instead of playing Avacyn for 47 weeks straight, like you see with modern players, true story, at my store, we had a person show up with the same competitive deck for 18 weeks in a row. You don't see that. You don't see that in our commander players that want to play a different deck. That's why there's always like there really isn't a market for budget cards for modern. Like you'll see some budget decks every now and again if people are trying to dip their toe, but it's not enough to really move the market for these budget versions of modern deck. Whereas budget commander decks, there absolutely is a market for like a budget card or a second best card in the commander market. So that is another thing I like about commander cards. All right, let's get back to the topic of hand of Ultimate Masters. You can definitely see that Phyrexian Altar, which is a card that if we actually look, it probably had one of the most plays. So we have Phyrexian Altar in 16,000 decks. I can't stand how EDH Rec actually, I wish they would change this, or at least give us the setting to change this, because this number's a bit misleading. A lot of times you'll see a bunch of multicolored cards up here in the top slots, because multicolored cards are already weeded out by how many decks they can be included in. So it's saying like Golgari Charm outranks Phyrexian Tower. Of course it doesn't. This is just saying that in a percentage of Golgari decks, Golgari Charm sees more play than the percentage of what Phyrexian Tower can be in a black, anything that includes black. So there are a lot less Golgari decks, of course, in general than anything that could include black decks. So I wish it would actually redo how this is so you can get a better understanding of which cards are actually pretty decent. So if we actually look at total volume, looks like Ancient Tomb in 42,000 decks. That's a great card to look at for possible cards to, of course, Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth in 47,000 decks. You have cards like Laboratory Maniac in 21,000 decks, Treasure Cruise in 20. These are pretty good volumes. So you first come to like an Artifact with 33,000 deck. This is actually something that should be in the number one row here, rather than dumb down here further down. So there are still some goodies though in this Ultimate Masters that I think eventually we'll recover. If Revelark didn't see a reprint in Ultimate Masters, there should be, or Double Masters, it should have a pretty good chance. I guess Life Alone is more of a commander card than I gave it credit for. Unfortunately, it's like these commander cards that also see playing modern have a tougher time of going up in value than just things that strictly see playing commander. I think it's just due to cards getting reprinted more that have that overlap. But yeah, sometimes these are ones that lag behind that you can actually get in on that should start to recover. So these are the type of things that we're going to look for in Double Masters now. Is cards that see a lot of play in Commander. So things that I would avoid. The first ones that I'd avoid here: Force of Will, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Blightsteel Colossus. No, not Blightsteel Colossus, is a commander card. But Blightsteel Colossus, I'll prove that it just has too little of commander to hold this price tag. So if Balefire Dragon sees more play than Blightsteel Colossus, which it does, I checked it earlier, then you got to think that this card is going to go back down to where it should be. So I think Blightsteel Colossus is way, way, way overvalued right now, even for Commander, even though it is just basically a vintage card in a Commander. Sometimes you see it in like Modern and Legacy, but it's just usually a one-of in that case. Blightsteel Colossus is way too overvalued. I think you'll see even like cards like Chrome Mox that do see Commander play, but also see Legacy play, start to go back down value, so I'd avoid something like this. And Dark Confidence, something and even like Sword of Fire and Ice, these are cards I'd absolutely, Wurmcoil Engine, absolutely avoid these cards. Why is Wurmcoil 38? The regular version's not even that high, or from other sets. These are the cards, that I do not think are going to be able to hold their value and are going to have the brunt of the depreciation of the set. Now, the cards I do like, I actually like Doubling Season. I don't see Doubling Season going down too much more. It might have, like how Baleful Dragon, it had this $12 that's how the price it was. It crashed all the way down to $5, and then it recovered. But I think Doubling Season, we saw on Battle Bond, it had a little bit of a price decrease. It came out the gates at 42, went down to only 38, and then started to go back in value. So I think we're going to see the exact same thing with Doubling Season. I think this is a hold. I don't necessarily think it's a sell, but I think it's a hold, and you shouldn't be actively trying to sell your Doubling Seasons. My guess is bottoming down to 40 and then start to recover, and maybe that's the time you should actually start getting into Doubling Season. However, the price memory for Doubling Season isn't going to be the most juicy target, because again, we're looking for Baleful Dragons and Phyrexian Altars, not things that are high demand already and can be stripped out pretty quickly. The same is said for Mana Crypt. Like, Mana Crypt is still too rich for my blood, for where eventually I think this card will go up in value when it finds its bottom, but it's one of those cards that takes a while, because the price memory is really, really there with this card, and it isn't the type of card that you want to be targeting. Same thing I'm going to say for land tax, these higher end mythics. I think what we want to find is these rares and these mythics that actually do see quite a bit of play in Commander that will have the best chance of recovering. So that's really when we start getting down in this route, where we're going to start looking for cards. So first of all, a card that's going to be interesting is Arcum Dagsson. Arcum Dagsson is a card that I think is going to get crushed, but Arcum Dagsson actually has a pretty decent amount of Commander play. I believe it was very similar to Baleful Dragon with that 7,000 ranking. So let's see, not as a commander, as a card. So we're going to add 223 because it actually has commanders, so it's 223. As a card, it is going to be, I guess we'll come back to this as we're lagging pretty bad. Okay, actually not. This is actually pretty bad. So I'm glad we actually checked this. So only 2,000 decks is nothing to really get excited about with Arcum. I thought it was using more artifact-based decks, but apparently it's not. I think it's a Q card just because I play it in most of my blue commanders when I used to play Commander. We'll keep our eye on that one. That's one that probably is going to have a hard time. Avenger Zendikar, this is a card that keeps proving itself. This is a perfect card that I like to talk about. Look at Commander 2018. It's reprinted Commander 2018. It got just dumped on. The value went all the way back down to $3. $12 is where this card ended up. Commander 2018, that wasn't too long ago. Did the same thing in dual deck as Zendikar versus Eldrazi. This card just got dumped on. Went down to $2, went back up all the way to 14. So this is a card that if it hits a low enough price, if it gets dumped on, which it looks like it's doing, look, it's lost $1 value in just a day's time period. If this keeps going down, this is the perfect card to get in on. Rise of the Redeemed is another one. Let's look at Rise from Ultimate Master. I know it's an insanely popular card in it has to go in Celestia decks, so that is something going against it. But it's 1,000 decks as a commander. That's pretty significant. It's pretty good. It's the rank 100, almost top 100, but 109 as a card. It is, man, EDH Shrek is lagging his cards here. 2,000. Okay, so I'm not as bearish as I was on this particular deck. So it's been about 3,000 decks. So, but I think it does have the chance price point for a card that can recover if it does get hit even more. So this is a card that goes down in that $2 to $3 mark, which it easily could. This is definitely a card to pick up. If we go down to other cards like Greater Good, Greater Good's a card that sees a ton of play in Commander and has the ability to go up when it gets reprinted, because this one also was what, the Battle Bond reprint? Yep, Battle Bond reprint got crushed and then rebounded. So this is, again, a perfect example. $3 back up to $8 because it does see that demand. If we go over to Greater Good, it's in 12,833 decks. Yep, this is a prime target for something to get in on when the dust settles for Double Masters. See, all the mythics are still hitting pretty good. I agree with this. Guys, Saint-Trapt is going to be the bulk mythic. It's going to be worse than anything that came out of Ultimate Masters. But there are some other goodies that I think will be definite pickups. Kudaltha Forgemaster. There's another good one that has gone back down to $1.86. Let's see where it was last time it was reprinted. It does get reprinted in Commander sets. It does not, actually. Maybe not with this particular card. It's had a hard time just as in one printing. It did start to have some movement. Maybe this was just like a sleeper. Let's look at Kudaltha Forgemaster to see where it thing I like about like cards like Kodaltha Forgemaster is whenever they print like an artifact commander that wants to sacrifice artifacts, this card just goes up in value. 6,000 decks. Yep, 6,000 is pretty decent for a deck with an artifact. Yeah, with its ability, it's pretty decent for a reprint. So maybe right now, if this is a card that goes down to 50 cents, that's what you look at getting it on. But that's typically, my my strategy. See, I'm liking these type of cards too that just got already crushed, the Heartbeat Spring. This is the exact example of cards that you want to avoid because the only reason they were worth money to begin with was low supply. I guess I didn't talk about that earlier. Low supply cards are something you want to avoid like the plague. If we go back over to Ultimate Masters, let's actually go back to my sheet here. We had things like Back to Basics. They actually came out the gates really expensive because they were a low supply reprint, and those suckers just got absolutely crushed. So let's go back to Ultimate Masters and see where Back to Basics is. Back to Basics got all the way down to $8, so it's even further. Yep, it's down to $7 now. There just wasn't enough reason to be investing in Back to Basics. It had an incredibly low supply with just being in Urza Saga. It was a card that was, it came out with a $70 price tag. What was it in Urza Saga? Urza Saga, it got all the way up to, that's $275 has got to be. Got all the way up to, it was more like $90 card that this card got up to. And then low supply just got crushed. So these are the particular cards you want to avoid like nothing else. It's Oubliette. Avoid it. It's going to be, and sees playing Pauper, but not enough to justify an uncommon being at $5. Avoid it. Cards like Vengevine. I guess it wouldn't be low supply, but it's just a Flavor of the Week commander deck. Avoid it as a mythic. I would even put in, would it be like Wound Reflection? Was this just a commander card at one point that has low supply? Oh yeah, here's another absolutely card you should avoid. A $10 price tag for Wound Reflection. All right, let's see what Wound Reflection actually is in EDH Rec. If it's below 2,000, that's a definite bad sign for the card. I did not say Kodaltha Wound Reflection. All right, EDH Rec, we can do this. Wound Reflection. Apologize for the lagginess of 2,000. Okay, 2544. Nope, this card can't hold. Absolutely cannot hold for how much supply is getting injected into it. Wound Reflection is something that is a sell. Some of these low supply cards, Trinisphere, another one I think is a mythic that, even though it's a mythic, absolute something you shouldn't be looking at to invest in. These are the type of cards that you avoid. Darksteel Forge is another one that if it's something that goes down low enough, this is definitely a card that has where it gets down to a $3 card after it got reprinted here and went all the way back up to 22. If we see the same thing with Ultimate Masters, they are double masters. They did put it in Mythic, which should help its price stabilize a little bit more. But that's a card I think that you should look at investing in. Anyway, finally when the dust settles, I think I'll make another spreadsheet like this. But instead of having these kind of colors, I'm going to put them in classifications of like low supply, high demand commander cards, competitive cards, and kind of give a judgment based upon where they're at. And we'll start following that because Double Masters, again, this is where I love these type of sets because things absolutely bottom out. What's the card that I made a killing on in Ultimate Masters? It was like Wall of Reverence, I think was one of them. So where's Wall of Reverence here now with... Yeah, this is one that I got for 10 cents a piece. So I guess it's not really a killing on, but I've been selling these commander players all day, and it got all the way down to 10 cents a piece on TCG Low. So right here, people were just dumping them. Dumping these cards, and was able to pick these up at 10 cents. And I have been able to sell these at $1. Like, these are things that actually did sell for $1. Yes, online, maybe you don't have the outlet like I do with like local customers to sell them to, but you can find like package deals that you can get these Wall of References. Buy list, for example, it's a good way to turn 10 cents into 60 cents with Card Kingdom. There's another card too. There's another card around this in Ultimate Masters that it just really went low and was able to get on this low and then sell high. I know that Buried Alive is another one that bottomed out. So Buried Alive, I believe, was like I was getting on TCG Player for under $1 for... Yeah, it was right here under $1. And I actually sold out around here. with Buried Alives for $1.50 because it was already something that the buy list actually increased more than I paid for it, and got out around here with Buried Alive. Again, there are little tactics for that. It is time consuming. I don't engage in it as much as I used to, just because I have other outlets now with my my Patreon taking off and be able to serve people just by keeping people happy and keeping that subscription fee up is something that is more profitable to me than actually flipping cards now. But this was the bread and butter of actually starting a lot of my operation, was just finding these cards that were really, really low, kind of the scraping the barrel cards, and then buy listing them off to places, or just find buyers for cards. And these are the type of things we'll keep a look at for Double Masters. All right, this is a long video, 30-minute video on Double Masters. I think the set's almost spoiled. We're just really looking at uncommons and commons left. So what are we looking at here with, a couple more mythics, 12 more mythics that need to be spoiled? Actually, I think they have been spoiled. They just haven't been put on this price with MG Goldfish. And I think we're there with rares. It's just the uncommons and commons are left. We'll have to wait and see. But there usually is some pretty good ones there in uncommons and commons. You'll find some cards that just get crushed, like Frantic Searches. They get crushed and then have a good time being able to be going up in value and actually buy lists for a profit. There you have it, though. Hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.